in social psychology, famous for conducting the experimental study in nurse and physician relationships. In this show, we aim to find out what really happened during that study and the method behind it. So, the aim of Hofling's study was to investigate the aspects of nurse-physician relationship, specifically what happens when a nurse is ordered to do something that goes against his or her morals. Hofling et al. Study, conducted in 1966, was a field study involving 3 hospitals in the Midwest of the USA, with 1 hospital acting as a control. 12 graduate nurses and 21 student nurses were asked to fill out a questionnaire about what they would do if confronted by an unmoral situation. 22 nurses from the other 2 hospitals doing normal duties were targeted for actual field experiment and put in the following position. While alone on the ward, they receive a phone call from an unknown doctor. So what really happened that day in Hofling's experiment? For the first time ever, we have a nurse here that is willing to be interviewed and tell her story about the Hofling experiment. We have been asked to keep this nurse anonymous. So nurse, what really happened that day?
Well, I was doing my rounds as usual when I got an unusual phone call from a doctor. He asked me to give some drugs to a certain patient. I asked him why, because I knew the drugs was an overdose. The conversation went on for 10 minutes or more, and after that I got told it was an experiment.
So, did you recognise this doctor's voice?
No, I didn't know who it was, and it's against the hospital policy to give someone drugs, especially with such a high dosage, without the doctor actually being present.
So, you didn't give the dosage?
No, I didn't.
Is there a reason you didn't do this?
I felt stressed and scared as I didn't know who it was, but I knew he did say he was a doctor, but I didn't recognise the voice.
So, you didn't do it because you didn't recognise the voice?
Yes.
So that nurse didn't give the drug because of hospital policy and she didn't recognise the doctor's voice. Here we have another nurse that has asked to be kept anonymous. So nurse, how was the day from your point of view?
Well, I was doing my rounds as normal when I got a phone call from a doctor asking me to prescribe a patient with some drugs. I was hesitant at first because I knew it'd be an overdose, but I went through with it anyway because it was a doctor of higher authority.
So you gave the overdose?
I did. I felt confused, but I felt pressured into doing it anyway, so I went through with it.
So the results for this experiment. 21 out of the 22 nurses that took part started to give the medication after the phone call from the doctor. And after the debrief, only half knew the correct dosage for astroturf. And afterwards, every single nurse thought they'd done the wrong thing and they shouldn't have followed orders. The first part of our grave evaluation is generalizability. This study has a really high generalizability because it gives us the insight to the authoritative environment of hospitals all around the world. The second part of our grave evaluation is reliability. This test is very reliable as it was run 22 times in the same conditions. There were similar results showing that the nurses had the same experience and there was an observer watching for extraneous variables. The third part of our grave evaluation is application. This test shows us that not only should people have the confidence to speak up more, but that obedience can be dangerous. The fourth part of our grave evaluation is validity. This study has a high ecological validity. The nurses were unaware of the test, so behaviour was natural. This demonstrates a difference between what people think they would do and what they would actually do. The population validity was also high. Nurses were simply those on duty at the time, but it could be argued that people in the USA are more likely to obey authority than in other cultures. The fifth and final part of our grave evaluation is ethics, which can also be split up into 4 different sections: C, A, R, and P. This is what we'll look into next. So the first part of our CARP evaluation on ethics, C stands for consent. The nurses did not give their consent to take part in this experiment because they did not know they were taking part in an experiment. A stands for anonymous. The nurses were kept anonymous, and therefore this part of the ethics stays sound. R stands for right to withdraw. The nurses did not have a right to withdraw because, again, they did not know that they were taking part in an experiment. And finally, P stands for protection. The protection was not good in this experiment because giving an overdose to a patient may have led to mental trauma. The conclusion of this experiment is that nurses will knowingly break hospital rules in a situation where a doctor tells them to, even if it goes against their own morals. Thank you for watching this psychology show.
Go.
Thank you for watching.
This psychology show.